This is my favorite part of hypnotic journeys when we're working in a client-led way because there's so much potential that just gets discarded because we don't set this up correctly. We're going to be talking about the IP phase today. I want to walk through some things, and we have some key questions here at the bottom to consider. But before we dive into that, this is by far the most important part of client work, right? There's the interaction and all the really cool magical stuff that happens in a session with you as a hypnotherapist. You're seeing your clients. You see these amazing breakthroughs, new insights emerging, things like that. They're getting in touch with these powerful resources, but where the rubber meets the road is when they go out into the real world. That's what we call the transition period in growth here. Let's walk through this model and understand this is also where we have the highest OTE potential. For those of you in my program, that's the opportunities to evolve. That's where the potential is off the charts. This is where you start to see the outstanding outcomes, right? People that say, hey, I crushed it in business, I hit record sales or whatever after working with me, because that client cleared their internal landscape with you through the leads formula. And it's not because of anything in particular I'm doing after the session. It's because we're giving them the room and the space they need to integrate the changes that have already occurred, the new insights and understandings and learnings. Keep in mind, our approach here is rooted in learning. It's not rooted in anything else. And so the best way for that client to learn what they do is to go on this path of discovery, right? So that's why my logo is always the path. I point that out every video, it seems like. That being said, let's dive into this. So what you have in front of you is something called the J curve. And this is popular in a bunch of different industries. You see this in biology, real estate, finance, investment, like private equity, things like that. Very, very common curve. And what this demonstrates in a single sentence is just about how things get worse before they get better. Now, we know this is often the case with clients, but unfortunately, the way we present the work we're doing, it actually prevents us from being able to utilize this effectively. Let's walk through this to give you a good conceptual understanding, and then we'll unpack how you can use it in your sessions. So essentially what we have here at the bottom axis is time going from left to right, and then we've got an indicator of progress. So towards the bottom would be a poor outcome, towards the top would be more of a desired outcome. And right now we have a current state, so that's where your client is right now. The client books a call with you here, they decide they want to make a change, they book a session with you. We're all very happy about that. They pay you a bunch of money, it's awesome. You do the client work, and then they enter this transition period. And sometimes it feels like this amazing high. And you've seen this before, I'm sure, where maybe the client reports, I have no cravings, I'm feeling incredible. And then a few months go by, they have one challenge and they crash and burn. Boom, they're back to smoking, they don't know what happened, they're confused, etc. Often what you'll see across all industries is actually there's more of a dip, right? So the expectation might be that, oh, it'll be a little challenging and they got to deal with some things and they're unpacking and they're learning, etc. Oftentimes, clients experience a level of challenge they weren't consciously aware of, so it actually feels more severe. That's why when we work in a client-led way, we're teaching them to embrace these things so they can stay smoke-free. But just like in all the industries, there is a turning point, and then suddenly they grow in an accelerated way. And typically, what I'm seeing, and you are too via my testimonials, the desired outcome or better happens. And I think it's because it's not just about the integration and processing, it's also the intellectual property phase, right? I'm giving them an opportunity to really take these learnings on and discover things for themselves. I don't care what we cover in a session in terms of what I teach them, so much as I'm very interested in what they're learning, right? I want to see what they discover, is what I typically say. And we're doing all this by just using the experience that they bring into the session and that they have during the session as the gateway into trance. And then that trance becomes the gateway to do all of this learning and to set up the reference frames they need to be able to navigate challenges more effectively. So really simple idea here, J curve. Let's get to our key questions now to explore this a little bit further. So one of the questions you want to start to ask yourself, how does this conflict with our expectations for client work? So with the client-led model, this is of course embraced. I've already sort of talked about that. We explore and embrace the unknown. We allow the discovery to unfold naturally, and we're helping the client just discover the resources they need to be able to navigate change very quickly. Just take a moment, just become aware of all the different ways that this might conflict with your current expectations for how client work needs to unfold. It's more important that you become aware of them. You can start to play with and tinker that stuff later, but allow yourself to become aware of it so your mind can now become conscious of it. Now you have an opportunity to study that problem, which is really cool. Next key question, how can you leverage or utilize this phase to maximally empower their client? So that's what you see with a lot of my work. Let me give you an example of what this might look like. I might see a client, they might report some fairly negative experiences post-session, but that's not really my concern. The way I embrace this with clients typically is very simple. I just tell them to become aware of their expectations and if they're judging their experience as their body's starting to heal. The majority of my work in this scenario is just affirming to that client that they don't necessarily need to judge or expect any specific thing right now. This is where the real work happens, and I let them know what they're experiencing is really important. They don't need to judge it. They don't need to have any expectations about it. It's about helping them internally orient themselves in such a way that they can begin to experience it and learn from it. We don't need them to do anything to it. There's things going on unconsciously that are absolutely phenomenal. If they get through this transition period and the growth and the progress isn't occurring, if they're still stuck with smoking and they feel back to normal, I want to see that person again as quickly as possible. But until then, I don't want to interrupt whatever it is that the unconscious mind is doing. This is where it takes over. When it comes to leveraging this from a suggestion or more of a habit-based model, if you haven't articulated, this is something that could occur, you might wind up in a situation where you have to do more sessions. And if your sessions are arranged around once we conclude the day, you won't have this problem anymore. The problem there is we've kind of brought our expectations for what success are into that session. We have no way of really knowing that's going to be the case. I don't really like to utilize expectations in that way. I'd more like to deal with the reality in front of us and empower the client that way versus trying to set expectations and kind of hoping they hit that. If they hit it, it's great, right? It just is incredible. But my favorite way to work with people is just to embrace the reality of what's actually happening and helping them navigate that challenge. Because the only expectation I have is that they can overcome it, right? It's difficult from that type of a model. Just give yourself some opportunity to brainstorm. What can you do here? Some people say, well, I want to give them like an audio. I'm going to make a client audio and then I'm going to give it to them and I need them to listen to it to sort of reinforce the work we did. One of their biggest problems there is that the clients don't actually listen to it. What you need to do from that angle is find a way to make sure they're listening to it consistently. Maybe put that into your contract or something. Would be, you have to talk to your lawyer about that. But ultimately, I'm not particularly interested in reinforcing what we covered in the session because once again, to maximally empower the client, I think we're positioning ourselves in a way to do that better by letting them walk that path of discovery after the session. And then that's where the intellectual property, that part of the IP phase is most prominent, because they're the ones orienting to their experience in a new way. Here's another key question. What if the client didn't need to find the root cause, but instead needed to experience it? So this is more of a root cause model. This just gives you an opportunity to reconsider what that is. So for those of you that aren't familiar, root cause model operates off of an assumption that there's this underlying cause for an individual, that they have this presenting problem, and then underneath the surface there's a root cause. Once we identify that, we can work on it and the presenting problem goes away. And that can happen, right? All of this stuff can happen. What if they have several root causes? And what if the solution wasn't that we sort of uproot that? What if they just need to become aware of it, explore it, make a different choice? What if they just need to experience that for a while? Maybe that's what this dip really is them giving an opportunity to learn more about it. I don't want to judge that. I don't want to assume that's not what that client needs. And I've seen this work. I can show you with evidence. I've seen people and then months later they quit smoking. I'm still having a problem here. And then boom, you start to see the testimony. It's been 6 months. It's been a year. I'm feeling amazing. If I would have interrupted that and assumed I knew better than that client's unconscious mind, maybe it would have worked, maybe it wouldn't have, but I don't want the dice roll. I would rather have the client lead the session, lead their own healing, take charge of those things. That's why we're maximally empowering the client. So the last item here is that humans are better at adaptation than prediction. Let's work with our nature to optimize efficiency and effectiveness. So if you think about it, trying to predict what that client needs or trying to predict what that client's experience might be like after the session is one approach to change work versus just empowering them to be able to adapt. Ultimately, what we've done is we've fostered an environment where the client can build their tools and the resources they need to overcome challenges. So it's less of a hang up in the future. Hey folks, I hope this helps. Like, subscribe, blow this video up, comment, share it with your buddies. Let me know if you have more questions about this stuff. I love to talk about it. And I can't wait to see you at my next training, folks. Take care.